L'chaim. I'm going to talk a little bit about Tanya. Because, as everybody knows, what was the reason that the Alter Rebbe was sent to prison? Outwardly is because there were people that didn't like Chassidim. But nothing happens outwardly. Everything happens because that's what, there's a spiritual reason. So the spiritual reason was the famous story. There was a very great Rebbe, very great tzaddik. He was a colleague of the Baal Shem Tov. His name was Reb Pinchas of Koretz. Remember that name for a minute, because I'll tell you how everything is relevant in this world. Everything comes together. Reb Pinchas of Koretz was a critic of spreading Chassidus. He felt that Chassidus was very special, and you can't just go around printing pamphlets and talking about Chassidus because it's not for everybody. It's only for special people. And one time, but he couldn't do anything about it. And one time, the Reb Pinchas of Koretz walks into the Beis Medrash in Mezrich, and his colleague, the Magid, is the Rebbe, and he's like the older Chassid, the older Tzaddik, and he sees near the garbage can, he sees some of the writings of the Baal Shem Tov or the Magid, Chassidic writings on the floor. And he went nuts. He says, you see, this is exactly what I was talking about. This is exactly what I'm talking about. You're not allowed, this is the reason. Look at this. It's like Leilin and Chaz v'Sholem, we should know, Chaz v'Sholem, a Sefer Torah should be in the garbage. So Alter Rebbe was there. Alter Rebbe realized that if he doesn't do something now, so there's going to be a spiritual catastrophe. Because when a tzaddik like Reb Pinchas of Koretz has a kapeda, has a problem, so the heavens tremble. So he went over to Reb Pinchas of Koretz and he said, I'm going to tell you a story. I'll tell you a mashal, an allegory, a metaphor. A king had a child, a prince, his only son, he was sick, and they didn't know what to do. They gave him every medicine. And they came to the king, and one guy, the one famous doctor, came down from City of Hope, and he said, there's only one thing you could do to save him. If there's a certain mineral in the diamond, in a diamond, and it's a very rare diamond, and this mineral, if you give your child to drink from this mineral, so he'll live. And the king said, wait a minute, in my crown, on the top of the crown, not just in the crown, but the top of the crown, there's this huge diamond, this wonderful diamond, and it's that stone. So the advisor said, King, with all due respect, the crown is a statement. It says so, it means something. So he says, what's the crown worth? If it'll save my son, so I'm ready to sacrifice the crown. So the doctor by that time, says the Alter Rebbe, the doctor came back and he said, your son is very, very sick. Very sick. He's almost gone. And I don't know if he even has the ability to swallow the medicine. Even if you take the crown, even if you take the diamond and you crush it and you put it into water, I don't even know if he has the physical ability to accept it. So the king said, I don't care. On the doubt that maybe a drop of the medicine will come and save my child's life, I'm willing to sacrifice the crown. Said the Alter Rebbe to Reb Pinchas of Koretz. This is the metaphor of Chassidus. Chassidus is the Yahalom shebeketer. It's the diamond in the crown, and the Jewish people need it. And even though they're on a low level, like but if one drop, if one vert, one thought of Chassidus will come and save a Jew or save the Jewish people, so God is willing to do it. And Reb Pinchas looked at him and he said, you're right. And the Magid called in the Alter Rebbe and said, I owe you a thank you because you saved Chassidus. You saved Chassidus. The reason that I told you to remember the name is because, remember I told you that the Tanya was printed in Slavita? So Slavita was a little city in Ukraine, and it had a printing press. And in those days, you couldn't just print. In those days, in order to have a printing press, you had to have a permit from the Tsar, and it was very difficult, very difficult. So there's a whole story which is not for now. It's a wonderful, beautiful, fascinating story. How the owners of the printing press of Slavita got a permit, and it was it was known that it was a Hasidic printing press, because there was another famous printing press, which was in Vilna, and that was the premier printing press. And there was other little ones, but I have books in my home from different cities, Berdichev, etc., Mezhebush even. But there were two primary printing houses. One was Slavita, which was more the Hasidic books, and Vilna, which was, of course, the non-Hasidic books. Who were the owners of the printing press in Slavita? The children of Reb Pinchas of Koretz. The children of Reb Pinchas of Koretz, they were known as the tzaddikim of Slavita because there's the whole story over there, how there was a libel on them, and they were sent to prison. It's a whole beautiful story. There's a book about it, how they went to prison. And before they went to prison, there was a very terrible punishment that they would give, the Cossacks or the Tsar's soldiers would give to the guilty people in those days, and that was that the soldiers lined up in two rows, and they had the whips or belts or sticks. And as the person would walk through or run through, they would beat him. And as fast as he ran, it still was a terrible beating. So there's a name for it, the Russian name, how that was part of the punishment, that they had to go through this gauntlet, this thing. So there were two brothers, Achim Agdoshim Mislavita, the two holy brothers. One was, I think, the older one was Reb Moshe. So they were meant to go to through this gauntlet, and one of them went through and he got hit and it was very bad, and then the other one went through and his yarmulke fell off. And he refused to move. Like, it didn't just fall off; it went flew off. And he refused to move, and they were punching him and hitting him. It took him months later to recover. The fact that he recovered itself was miraculous. Until amazingly, one of the soldiers, Pashut, had Rahmanas on him. Pashut, he had a spark of humanity in him, and Pashut went and he got his yarmulke and he put it back up, and he went and he continued. So these two holy people, the children of the Reb Pinchas of Koretz, they were the printers of the Tanya. Amazing how things come around. So today, I'll tell you a fresh story that happened to me today. And it's just amazing, because anybody that knows anything what's going on in the Jewish world sees that there's a tremendous arousal in learning Tanya. It's literally amazing. And I had no idea how much. I'll tell you the story that happened to me today. I have a business interest, so I was on a conference call with a business issue, a healthcare company, and the main guy, it's not important, he lives in the 5 towns. I don't know him well. I know of him a little bit. I've spoken to him once or twice before. I sent him some svarim, some books. He knows me. He doesn't know who I am. He knows me a little bit. He doesn't know what I do. He has no idea. He just knows my name is Rabbi Weiss and whatever. So I was on the conference call, and it was a Zoom call, and there were 6 people on the call, and it was a business call. It was a pure business conversation, and everybody was wanting to hear what this guy was. The guy was, trying to pitch him something. So in the middle, this guy says, "Wait a minute, guys, I have to make a pause in the meeting." And everybody okay, because he's the main guy. He says, "I need to talk to Rabbi Weiss." I said, "Oh boy." So he tells me, he says, "It's an honor to speak to you on Yutes Kislev." Okay. I had no idea this person had any connection to Yutas Kislev. He tells me, I want to tell you something. He says, I am not Chabad at all. But last year, and I'm going to find out how, but last year I started on Yutas Kislev learning Tanya with Rabbi Gordon online. And yesterday I finished the Tanya with Rabbi Gordon online. And I'm so happy. I'm so thrilled. And he says that, so I want to wish you a good Yom Tov, he tells me. So he says, I was so inspired by Rabbi Gordon's Tanya, changed my life. I'm so inspired that I went online to try to call Rabbi Gordon. So I called the office in the valley, and I said, I want to speak to Rabbi Gordon. And they said, unfortunately, Rabbi Gordon passed away a few years ago. So they gave me one of his children, I don't know who, gave one of his children, and I told him, I said how much it meant to me, and thank you very much. And he said he just wanted to say that in front of everybody. Here you have a guy, big businessman, runs a lot of healthcare facilities, a lot, like over 100. And what inspired him and what turned him on and what changed him was Tanya. Because Tanya is not just another book. Tanya is a sefer that transforms people. And you know, there's a saying I saw from the Rebbe Marash, the fourth Rebbe of Chabad. There's a saying I never saw this before, but I saw it a few days ago. The Rebbe Marash, who was known for good sayings, said that there are three things that he says sometimes a person has money, but he doesn't feel like he's wealthy. Sometimes a person could be a thief, but he doesn't feel like he's a thief. And sometimes a person could learn Chassidus, but it doesn't transform him. It doesn't change him. So what's the antidote? So if you're wealthy, so if you get more money, you'll feel your wealth. If you're a thief, or if you steal a little more, you'll realize that you're a big thief. And if you learn Chassidus and you feel it doesn't affect you, it's a sign that you didn't learn enough Chassidus. You have to learn more Chassidus. In other words, they say a story. They say that if a person learns a little Tanya and it doesn't transform him, it doesn't talk to him, the pasuk is Kikara ve'lecha adover mi'oid. It's close to you. It means that if you learn a Perek Tanya and it doesn't talk to you, it means you didn't learn the Tanya. Tanya has to it's not just, I'm going to say a nice vart that the neshama is this and it has that, it has this level and that level, like Kabbalah, like, it has 10 levels of this and 4 levels of that and 3 levels of this, and you're very, very knowledgeable in Kabbalah. Chassidus is not meant to be just a exercise in intellectualism. Chassidus has to take a person and change him. Before we conclude with this segment, I want to say a beautiful story. Beautiful story. First, let's say a little l'chaim without singing. Say l'chaim that we should begin learning Chassidus. I should begin learning Chassidus. Aliba denafshe, meaning it should be something that we internalize, and not just that we could be a show off and just say that we know a little Chassidus. It should literally transform us. L'chaim, l'chaim. There was a Yid in Crown Heights that those of us that grew up in Crown Heights knew very well. His name was Reb Zalman Garari. He has a grandson here, probably more than one, but a grandson here, my dear friend and mentor, Rabbi Nassim Garari from Simi Valley, was a tzaddik of a Yid. So this Reb Zalman Garari was a very interesting person. Very interesting person. And I'm not going to say everything interesting about him. He was a very big scholar. He was very wealthy. He was a very gruff person, and he acted very much like a wealthy man, meaning he had that strength of character. And he was very, very close to the Rebbe. Very close to the Rebbe. They say a cute story To say a cute story that he took care, meaning he took care of the Rebbetzin. People were the Rebbe was very high. The Rebbe was like a king. Nobody had access to the Rebbe. But he took care of the Rebbetzin, meaning he made sure that the Rebbetzin was okay when she was sick. So one time the Rebbe came home, and the Rebbetzin told him, this is in the later years, that she went to the doctor and they made a test, and the results came back good. It was a good test. This is like 11 o'clock at night, or 10 o'clock at night, whatever it was, late at night. So the Rebbe tells her, Oy Bazoi, if that's the case, you should call Reb Zalman. You should call Reb Zalman. Meaning, tell Reb Zalman that the results came back good. And the Rebbetzin says, it's 10 o'clock at night, 11 o'clock at night. So the Rebbe tells him, he's a wealthy man. I'm sure he has a telephone next to his bed. That was the musik. I'm sure he has a telephone next to his bed, so don't worry about it. In any case, this Reb Zalman Garari, I can't say I knew him. Of course I knew him. But I knew him a little bit because once in a while he would come to my father. He was very involved in the Shabbos candle campaign. He would come to my father for money. He would come to my father maybe to be honoree at the thing. It's not important. He also had a big library. The Rebbe told him to build a big library. So I wanted to see his library. I love books. So I went to his house, and he took out a huge library. And I felt, let me at least, and he was there. He was like all excited that somebody came to see the library. He was all excited because, nobody really came for some reason. So I didn't want to disappoint him. So I saw a book and I said, can I borrow it? And the Rebbe told him the library should be a library for lending, not just you should have it for yourself. So I said, can I borrow this book? He says, yeah, you have to write. He had a book. So you have to write your name and with book, and you have to bring it back in 7 days. So whatever, I took it and I brought it back. Every time he saw me for the next 4 years, did you bring back the book? Did you bring back the book? Anyways, that was my relationship with him. I didn't know him at all. That was it. That was my relationship. Anyways, they say a beautiful story. Listen to this story. And try to internalize it, guys. Try to internalize it. That this Reb Zalman Garari, I don't want to say a bad word, but he was religious to an extreme. To an extreme. There's some people that don't eat anything on Pesach. They peel tomatoes, right? And this guy didn't eat anything. He didn't eat anything on Pesach, and his whole house was covered in plastic. It was to the nth degree, literally. And in everything, he was very religious. He was a very religious person. Whatever. Just whatever. So, in the earlier years, he would travel. He had a business. He was a businessman. He was very wealthy. And he had his business interests were overseas. So he had a business overseas. And he goes to the airport, and they tell him, he goes to the airport, let's say Tuesday night, and they tell him, sorry, Mr. Garari, flight is canceled. We booked you a hotel room. And come back tomorrow afternoon, tomorrow evening, and you're on the next flight. So he says to himself, what, hotel? What do I need? I don't want to go to a hotel. I want to go back home. He would give a shir every morning in Gemara at 5 o'clock in the morning or 4:30. He was a very interesting person. He had his shul that he went to. So he said, I want to go home, sleep in my own bed, get up in the morning, give my shir. I have another day to give the shir. Go to the mikveh, down with the minyan, whatever. I need a hotel. I don't need no hotel. But he had a problem. What was Reb Zalman Garari's problem? There's a very interesting sefer. The author of the sefer is called, name was Rabbi Yehuda HaChassid. Very famous guy. He lived in Yehuda HaChassid. He was in a French from the French Rishonim. He made a book called Sefer Chassidim, which was an interesting book of how to be more spiritual. But he also made something else. He made a testament. It's called Tzavos Rabbi Yehuda HaChassid. The Tzavah, the will and testament of Rabbi Yehuda HaChassid, meaning like 150 statements of what he wants you to do. And there's a whole controversy in the books, in the holy books, whether we should take him seriously or not. I'm serious. This is an issue. In other words, he says over there a lot of different things, a lot of strange things. And the commentaries, I'm talking about the big boys, not the little boys, the big boys, the Chassam Sofer, the Yehuda, Tzemach Tzedek, I mean the big guns. They deal with the fact, are we supposed to listen to the tzava of Rabbi Chassid? To this thing. A lot of strange things. You're not, on certain nights you can't do this, on certain nights you can't do that. One of the more famous strange things is you can't eat turkey. You shouldn't eat turkey. He tells it. So some people say there's a whole controversy. And they say that the reason that we don't have to listen to anything he says is because he only wrote it for his children, for his grandchildren, but not for everybody. We're Chabad. The Tzemach Tzedek deals with this extensively, and he says not everything in the tzava of Rabbi Chassid do we have to listen to, but certain things we're very careful. I'll give you certain things that you probably don't even realize comes from the tzava, the testament of Rabbi Chassid. For example, you shouldn't polish your shoes on the day that you travel. We're very careful in that, by the way. He says you shouldn't cut your fingernails on Rosh Chodesh. This is brought down, I think, in Ramah, if I'm not mistaken. Another thing he says that's very famous, very well known, that the daughter-in-law and the mother-in-law cannot have the same name. Same name. These are things that the Tzemach Tzedek himself says, these are things we have to be careful about. These are things that we have a tradition that we don't do. The Rebbe, somebody would ask the Rebbe, what do I do? I have a good shidduch from my son, and her name is X, and my wife's name is X, so the Rebbe would say, add a name. The Rebbe would say different thing. The Rebbe took it very serious. Another thing, by the way, very interesting, I happen to know my daughter-in-law, I think, came from that problem or issue that two brothers who marry two sisters shouldn't live in the same city. So there is such a case in Crown Heights, and one of them lived in Morristown, not in New York. Okay. So one of the interesting things of Rabbi Chassid, I'm sorry that I talk too long because nobody ever listens to me. So I figured one time I'm talking, I might as well get mileage. But you'll see that there's a reason I'm saying all this so long. You'll see. So he says, one of the more interesting things is, and I don't think this is one of the Tzemach Tzedeks, but this Reb Zalman Gerari took it very serious because he was a very frum person. That when you leave your house to go on a trip, you cannot return to your house before you finish your trip. In other words, once you leave, you can't come back in. The whole Weiss is a lot of Hasidic stories about it, whatever. So Reb Zalman says to him, so what do I do now? I left yesterday my house in Crown Heights. I left my house in Crown Heights to go on the trip, and I didn't go on the trip yet. I can't go home because I'm a follower of this aspect of Rabbi Chassid. I can't go home. So Reb Zalman was a chaverman. He picks up the phone. In those days, I don't know if anybody hear of a payphone? You ever remember a payphone? Yeah. Okay. It's funny, my kids don't know what a payphone is, but in any case. So picks up a payphone. Now, in those days, in New York at least, you were able to also receive calls from a payphone. I don't know if you remember that, know that. In 770, there used to be a payphone, and people would call 770, literally. Would call the payphone. I think I even have the numbers still. So, in the hallway, exactly. So he picks up the phone, he calls Rabbi Chadikov. Tells Rabbi Chadikov his dilemma, his big dilemma, his earth-shattering dilemma. That my trip is delayed. I want to go home, but I can't go home because I follow this minig or this thing of Rabbi Chassid. So Rabbi Chadikov knew who he was dealing with. He knew that he was serious. He wasn't playing games. He says, can you give me 10 minutes? Give me 10 minutes. I'll see if I can maybe get an answer for you from the Rebbe. Give me the number where you're calling from, and I'll call you back. Gives him the number. Waits. 10 minutes later, Rabbi Chadikov calls up. He says, the Rebbe said that you should learn a Perek Tanya. You should learn a chapter of Tanya, because when you learn a chapter of Tanya, you're not the same person. So since you're not the same person, so you're exempt from the it's not you. It's not you anymore. It's not you anymore. So learn a Perek Tanya, and then you can go home. That's what the Rebbe tells Reb Zalman. I knew this story for many years. I've heard the story before. I'm a bit of a connoisseur on stories. I knew the story. Lately, I read the story somewhere, and there's a PS to this that I never knew before, and that's, I think, probably the most important part of the story. So, the Rebbe had Rebbe Chadakov call Rabbi Zalman Garari the next day at home, and he picks up the phone and he says, "The Rebbe wants to know, did you become a different person? Did you become a different person? What's going on over here? Well, this is just a joke? It's not a joke." The Rebbe wanted to tell a Chassid that you can't just take a chapter of Tanya and read it like Tillim. You know, Tillim is wonderful, but Tillim, David HaMelech gave a prayer that everybody who jumbles Tillim should be received like he learned the deepest concepts in Talmud. But Tanya is not Tillim. Tanya is not something that you just read up a chapter and you go weiter. Tanya has to change you. It has to transform you. So the Rebbe wanted to know, yeah, you asked a good question. You're very serious. You're very religious. You're very frum. You're very this. You're very that. And I gave you an answer. I want to know, did it change? Are you a different person? The pshat has to be, we have to learn, Yutas Kislev, the reason Alter Rebbe sat in prison, and that's why it was so lengthy in this story. The reason Alter Rebbe sat in prison is what I'm about to say right now. For Chassidus. For Chassidus. We think, okay, there's Chassidus, there's Zohar, there's Kabbalah, there's this, there's that, there's Musar, there's one, there's, this guy and that guy and this great rabbi, and it's all true. It's all true. It's all true. There's a tremendous amount of literature out there. And it's all holy. It's all Gisvei Kodesh. But the Alter Rebbe sat in prison for a reason. What's the reason? Because whenever there's something good, there's always something against it. Whenever there's something good, there's always something against it. Alter Rebbe was the greatest rabbi in Ukraine, the greatest Hasidic Rebbe, and he was coming out with something good. He was going to transform people. So the other side said, we can't allow this to happen. We can't. My job is going to be over. I'll be unemployed. So we have to do something. So they put him in prison, and they were going to kill him, etc., 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 etc. Why? For Chassidus. So the fact that Alter Rebbe was able to overcome and be released, meaning the Tsar said, not only are you released, but you're going to be a first-class citizen. I think in Hebrew it's called Ezrach Nechbad L'Dorotav. For many years, for all the generations, you're going to be a first-class citizen in Russia, which is a big thing. This was a victory of Chassidus. So what do we have to take from this? Why are we sitting here tonight? Why are we sitting here tonight? We have to take from this that after everything is said and done, we have to start learning Chassidus. We have to start learning Chassidus. Yeah, Baruch Hashem here, tremendous rabbis who are very practical, very internalization. And Baruch Hashem, you have Rabbi Gordon who can teach you Tanya. There's another wonderful, I don't know if you know this, there's another wonderful thing. It's called 3-Minute Tanya by a guy called Naftali Silverberg. It's amazing. Tanya is life changing. Tanya is life changing. And we have to make a decision tonight that we're going to endorse, not endorse. We're going to validate. We're going to validate why the Alter Rebbe sat in prison, and we're going to take a Tanya in any language. I personally, I read Hebrew very well, so there's a Rabbi Steinsaltz has a set of Tanya. It's called the yellow set because he changed it. I don't know. Don't ask me why. But there's yellow books from Tanya. It's amazing. And then Yankee Tauber translated in English, and Rabbi Gordon, etc., etc., etc. Rabbi Jacobson is phenomenal. Rabbi Jacobson is based on Adin Steinzel. Don't tell him I told you this, but he took it all from Adin Steinzel. But anyways, so it's just amazing. It's just amazing. It's life changing. So we have to make a decision tonight. Each and every one of us sitting here, including myself, that we're going to start learning Chassidus, and it's not just say the words, but learn Chassidus, even 3 lines, and it should transform you. They say story that Chassidim would come to the Rebbe, these peasants, Chassidim. I don't call them. I just want to give it over in a way that we should understand. Simpletons, people that weren't really big scholars, and the minute the Rebbe would say the mimer, the discourse, and he said a pasuk like Pod B'Shalom Nashim Mikrabli, which is a pasuk in Tillim, they went crazy. And they would come back home and they would say, what did the Rebbe say? Tell me something. So what did the Rebbe say? That was it. That's all they knew. But they heard a pasuk from the Rebbe in a mimer, and it transformed them. We have to. We don't have. I don't have that kind of in the neshama. I'm a very coarse person, but we have to learn a Perek of Tanya. You have to learn some Likutei Torah. Everything is coming out in English. Baruch Hashem, we're publishing Likutei Torah now in English. The sichas from the Rebbe in English, in every language that you want, in any venue that you want, in internet, in print, in anything you have. There's no excuse. There's no excuse. I have to go to. I don't want to talk about myself. It's not important. But you have earpods, and you have an internet, and you hear so much to hear from Chabad.org. You could become a scholar in Chassidus from Chabad.org itself. That's it. That's all you need is one website. And Steinsaltz and Jacobson, it's just amazing. It's just amazing. So we have to make a decision that tonight, from starting tonight, we're going to validate the reason the Alter Rebbe sat in prison for 53 days, 200 years ago, is for the sake of Chassidus. Hashem should help, that we should merit to raise our children in the ways of Chassidus, raise ourselves in the ways of Chassidus, and should be v'darkei Chassidus. What's the lashon, Yoel? No, du kannst doch die alle Sachen. Good yontiv, l'shana teva, tekasav v'sechasim v'darkei Chassidus, v'limud Chassidus, tekasav v'sechasim. L'chaim. Regroup. Okay. There were Chassidim, students of the Magid, the Holy Magid, that were sitting in a Farbrengen, like tonight. And one of their colleagues came in, and he said, Chavedim, Chevra, my wife just got a very bad diagnosis. And the doctors say that they can't do anything. So please, give me a bracha. Give me a blessing. Give me a blessing. I'm very distraught. So the Chavedim, the Chavraya, said to themselves with characteristic humility, listen, who are we to give you brachas? Who are we to give you blessings? You want a blessing? Go to the Rebbe, go to the Magid. Who are we? We're a bunch of guys sitting around with a bottle of vodka and some mezainas and some pickles. Of course, they were. The Alter Rebbe describes the Chavedim of the Magid, the Chavraya Kadisha, the Holy Society. He says that forget about them. The people that were around them were godly. Forget about the students themselves. He talks there's a whole sicha. How these the side guys, the sides people, not the students themselves, were sitting around and talking. What was the greatness of the Nisayan of Rabbi Avinu? If God would come to me and tell me, what's the greatness? So each one said a different answer. One guy said this, one guy said that, because he did it right away. He did it with happiness. So Alter Rebbe said these were the side students, the people that were listening to the students, meaning and he said each one's answer was based on his level in spirituality. They were great people. So you can imagine the students themselves. So the Alter Rebbe gives a patch on the table, and he stood up, because in those days, very interesting tidbit of Hasidic information. In those days, when somebody repeated a saying of the Rebbe, they would stand up. They would say it standing. They didn't say it sitting down, They said it's standing up. So the Alter Rebbe stood up and he said, we heard from the Rebbe, meaning the Maggid of Mezrich, as in Yiddish he says, as was a Chassidische Farbrengen ken ufton, ken Malach Michol nish ufton. That what a Chassidic gathering, a gathering of brothers of Chassidic brotherhood can accomplish, not even the angel Michael, who's known for the angel of kindness and the angel of healing, even he can't. So we're all going to give a bracha to our friend, and his wife should have a full shleim, etc. And they did that. So number one, we're sitting here tonight, and there's a lot of tzaras in Klal Yisrael, unfortunately. So let's have in mind those that need bracha for refuah, those that need a bracha for shidduchim, those that need a bracha, their children should have shidduchim, those that need a bracha for parnasa. They should merit in every which way, in a tremendous way, that in the schus of a Chassidus Farbrengen, that we should all, they should be able to accomplish, whether it's health, wealth, children, nachas, anything that is needed, anything that a person needs, because Jews don't need any tzaras. We've had enough tzaras. So l'chaim for that, l'chaim. I want to share with you a personal story that I don't really have the opportunity always to share. I merited to see this myself. Whatever. So we mentioned before, unfortunately, there's a concept of those that are oppositions to Chassidus. So the truth be told, if you look at the population of Jews, how many Jews are there? 16 million, 17 million, 18 million? How many ultra-Orthodox opponents to Chassidus are there? 100,000? 200,000? How many? How many people do you think occupy the non-Chassidic, ultra-Orthodox world that have a problem with Chassidus? Because today, a lot of people, are very, very into Chassidus, even in I don't want to go say names of rabbis, but there are a lot of rabbis in the Five Towns and in Lakewood that are in Israel. They're very into Chassidus, whether it's Chabad Chassidus, whether it's other types of Chassidus, Pesetzna, whatever, different, beautiful, heartwarming Chassidus. So how many, let's call them for what they are, misnagdim are there already? 100,000? Misguided, whatever. How many? 100,000? I don't even think so. I don't even think there's 100,000. The Rebbe wanted very much that we should, dafka specifically those people, they should see the beauty and light of Chassidus. The Rebbe didn't say, 100,000 guys, fine, no problem. They'll become 200,000, no problem. We're going to focus on the other 16,800,000. The Rebbe wanted very much that the light of Chassidus should reach those places, and that's why the Rebbe would encourage people to go out. And since we're, and it's not easy. It's not easy. I have a colleague. I'm not going to give too many descriptions. I don't want to. I have a colleague who became a shliach in a very religious area. And I'll tell you a little story. This is a story within a story, like I always do. That I grew up with somebody who, for some reason, we were best friends. There's certain type of friends that you only have when you're friends with them from kindergarten. And those friends, anything can happen, but you still remain best friends. You know that kind of a friend? It's like a certain friend that no matter what, you're buddies. We'll go to camp and we would sleep in the same bed. We grew up mamish from nursery school, literally nursery school. And he always had something against Lubavitch. He always had something. He didn't like Lubavitch. He fancied himself coming from a non-Lubavitch family, and he was going to take the flag of, he's going to be the guy that's going to, and he would always, dig me and this and that, and, okay. Whatever. We grew up. We went our separate ways. Again, this is a story within a story, okay? So we went our separate ways. And once in a while, we would see each other. I think his mother passed away. I went to Shiva, whatever. Again, this is a relationship that even if you don't see the guy for 10 years, you're still like a brother. I don't know if you ever have those friends, whatever. So one day, out of the blue, I get I don't know if I was on WhatsApp then, an email, I don't know what it was. I get a message. Did you learn this week's mimer? That's a true story. Did you learn this week's mimer? His name is Moshe, whatever. Let's call him Moshe. I didn't know what to do. I thought maybe, because there's a certain non Chabad rabbi who calls his discourses also maimarim. And I'm trying to figure out, is this a trick? Is he trying to give me a dig? I didn't know what he was talking about. So I text him back or whatever it was. I say, what mimer? What mimer are you talking about? She goes, what do you mean? The mimer in the Dvar Malchus. And I say, who is this? Who is this? Who are you? And he says, it's Moshe. And I say, how do you come to a mimer in Dvar Malchus? I mean, it's like. She tells me simple. That near him, a younger man, a very chashuv younger man, I don't want to say his name, a younger man, a big scholar, very holy man, very young guy, probably Nachman's age. Young guy, became a shliach in a religious area. He opened up a shul, he gave shiurim in Chassidus and in Gemara. And this, my friend, since he was a block and a half away, he started going to daven, New York or wherever these fruma places. You don't actually go to the shul. You go to the more or less the closest shul, as long as it's more or less your style. So he started going there, started going to the classes, and he starts learning Chassidus. And he starts getting gem videos. This guy that was the biggest anarchist in the dust, he's calling me up, sending me videos of the Rebbe. He's sending me videos of the Rebbe. So this younger man, this shliach that I told you had the effect on my friend. He moved to a Jewish area. I'm not going to say where. And he wanted to learn. He's a fine younger man. He knows he's a kind of a special head. Comes from a family, a Lubavitch family that are known for geniuses. And he knows how to learn. So he walks into the local yeshiva in the morning, and he figures he'll learn there. Maybe he'll find a chavrusa there. Maybe he'll find somebody to study with. And he walks in. So the Rosh Yeshiva with a long white beard sees him, calls him over right away. Come here. So he tells him, he says, who are you? Tells him, this is this is who I am. He says, what do you do? What do you do? He says, this guy has a nose for Lubavitch. So he says, I just opened up. I moved here a few months ago, whatever. I opened up the Chabad shul, whatever. He says, what are you doing here? What are you doing here? Because he's getting scared. He's coming here, you're going to take over. He says, I want to learn. I want to make a seder. I want to make a time to learn. Maybe I figure I'll find a chavrusa. Maybe I'll learn. So the rabbi is looking at him to see, are you joking me? Are you playing with me? Are you trying to trick me? He goes, okay, you can come here. But you leave Lubavitch at the door. You leave Lubavitch at the door. This is what we're dealing with, unfortunately. So what would somebody like my wife say? You know what? There's plenty of Jews out there that don't put on tefillin, and they don't know Aleph Beis, and they don't keep Shabbos, and they don't learn Gemara. Forget about those guys. Forget about them, because you go to the other 17 million Jews that aren't have no issue. The Rebbe said, no, I want those people to learn Chassidus. I want those people to learn Chassidus. Why? They say that the Magid called in the Alter Rebbe, and he said, I'm giving you a big bracha because you need a big bracha, because you need to overcome a big negative. Alter Rebbe was in an area in White Russia that was very, very learned and very, very anti-Chassidus. And the Magid wanted him to overcome specifically those type of people. Specifically to transform the B'nai Torah, let's call them, the people that were so steeped in Torah. In other words, the Rebbe saw, and the Magid saw that it's specifically these people that need to be illuminated. There's a big Rosh Yeshiva. I'm not allowed to say his name. He's a huge Rosh Yeshiva. And last week, he was at an event in Eretz Yisrael. And next to him, at a Farbrengen type thing. And next to him was sitting a Lubavitcher Chassid, another rabbi. And he turns to this Lubavitcher rabbi and he says, I want to tell you something. It says, my teacher, who was the foremost anti-Hasidic leader of the previous generation, very, very, very adamantly negative to Chabad, says, my teacher said terrible things about the Rebbe. Terrible things. Chassidus Kislev, we can talk a little bit more open. He says, I was shocked. I was shocked. He's my teacher, he's my Rabbi. And this is a guy that he's very big Rosh Yeshiva. He's a big guy. He's like probably in his early 60s. He should live long. He's going to be like the head. He says, I couldn't accept what my Rosh Yeshiva said. This is an amazing story. I couldn't accept. The reason is because the guy that told me the story made me promise that I'm not going to repeat the name. He says, so I went to a local Chabad library, and I borrowed all of the Rebbe's Sichos. I borrowed the 40 books of Likutei Sichos. Tells the guy, he says, I locked myself in a room for 30 days. I went through every Sikha of the Rebbe. And I saw that my teacher was wrong. I said, I can't come out against him because he's my teacher, but I saw for myself that my teacher is wrong. We're now in an era of openness. Things are happening in an open way. And what we have to do is that if we go around with the fact that when you meet somebody, you say, let me tell you a vart that I learned. Let me tell you something I learned today in Tanya. Let me tell you something I learned today. I heard on the internet in a mimer. That's gonna have a profound effect. So the story goes that I want to tell you that I began. The story goes like this. My father, for those that knew him, was a very interesting person. He grew up in an area that never heard of Chabad, except through his teacher, which is a story in itself. And he moved to Los Angeles. He had heard vaguely about Chabad. He grew up in Hungary. In Hungary in those days, Chabad didn't exist. They vaguely knew about somebody called the Balatanya, Alter Rebbe, but they never Chabad didn't exist. You have to understand, in the 20s and 30s, the Soviet Union was like a hermetically sealed place. To say that there's a group of Jews in Russia was like saying there's a group of Jews in the moon. That's how it was. But he heard about Chabad, and he wanted to see the Rebbe. But it never came out. He came as an immigrant. He came as a nobody. And he met Rabbi Reichik of blessed memory. And he became close to the Rebbe, which is a whole different story. So he became close to the Rebbe. At the same time, he felt that because of the Rebbe's blessing, he was successful in business. And my father was a very special person, and he helped everybody. Didn't matter which group you were connected to. He helped everybody. Okay. My father has one daughter, my sister, and she married a very special man they became shluchim in the Northeast, in Seattle, Washington. And they opened up a cheder. They opened up a school. The year that they opened up the school, the Jewish community in Seattle were trying to get their Hebrew school a little bit better. And they felt that the cheder that my brother-in-law opened was in direct competition to their school, and they had a big problem. And they were causing a lot of problems, causing a lot of issues, even though theoretically there was no competition because it was two different areas, but that's the way it is. Happens to be that the person behind the biggest opposition to my brother-in-law was somebody that Rabbi used to study in the yeshiva of Rabbi Wasserman. I don't know if anybody remembers Rabbi Wasserman. Rabbi Wasserman was a very great Lithuanian rabbi who opened up a yeshiva here called Or Elchanan. First it was in Burbank. Yoel, of course, I know. Yoel and his brother. Burbank, and then it moved to Kings Road, and then it merged with Chabad on wherever it is over Formosa. So in the mid 60s, Rabbi Wasserman wanted to elevate the yeshiva, so he brought boys from New York. One of the boys from New York, and came Shabbos, they would eat by certain balabatim, by certain people. So one of the boys would eat by my father's house every Shabbos. And this guy was the guy that was the primary rabble rouser against my brother-in-law. So my father, didn't know what to do. My father made phone calls, screaming. Anybody knew my father? He was a screamer. So whatever. So they made a decision. They made a thing like this: that this school in Seattle is run by an organization, a wonderful organization. I know you're not going to believe me, but the Rebbe was behind the establishment, or at least he helped him out in the beginning tremendously, called Torah Masorah. Torah Masorah is an educational organization that helped day schools around the United States. Even like Emek, for example, was under Torah Masorah. Even I think Torah Semis used to be. It was an organization. Hillel for sure was an organization that basically, if you opened up a day school, they helped you out. They gave you educational materials. They helped you find principals. They helped you find teachers. It was a wonderful educational organization. And this school in Seattle was under Torah Masorah, which was headed by this guy that used to eat by my father's house. But the top, the Rebbe, so to speak, of Torah Masorah was the Rosh Hashiva of Lakewood, whose name was Reb Shneur Kotler. Very nice man. So they made a decision that, let's have a meeting. Let's have a meeting. There was a guy that was trying to make peace, and my father was fuming. Not only the fact that why you're harassing Lubavitch, but you ate in my house for so many years. You're the one. Okay. So he comes to New York, and they had a driver, come to pick my father up from Crown Heights, and they go to Lakewood. Goes to Lakewood, and the guy tells my father, "You want to see the yeshiva? You want to see the yeshiva?" And my father was so angry at the whole situation. "No, I don't want to see the yeshiva." He says, "But in order to go into the office of Reb Shneur, you have to go through the yeshiva." Okay. So my father says that they opened the door, and there was, in those days, today there's Kadei Nahara, I don't know, 3,000 people learning, or 5,000 people. It's awesome. In those days, it was, let's say, 300 people learning, 400 people. My father never saw such thing in his life. Beis Medrash with 400 guys sitting and learning, it overwhelmed him. Okay, walks in. Anyways, Reb Shneur Kotler was a beautiful man. He had tremendous sterling midas. He was a wonderful person. And the story ended up good. Story ended up well, I think eventually even the cheder, for many years, my brother-in-law's cheder stopped. Anyways, it ended up, the story ended up well. And the upshot of the story was that my father became friends with Reb Shneur. My father became friendly with this Rosh Hashiva of Lakewood, who was a wonderful person. To the point that people don't know this, 1977 or 75, when Lakewood was opening up the kollel, that is now the famous kollel on Beverly Boulevard, it was opened up in my father's house. My father was the primary thing. My father Shiva, the Rosh HaKollel, Rabbi Fassman, who passed away already, said, "You see that table? That's where your father gave the first money to open up the kollel." Okay, very nice. So my father became very friendly with this Reb Shneur, and they made up that every time my father would come to New York, every other time, they would he would go see him. It wasn't easy because even today, I had to go to a wedding. Even today, from Brooklyn to Lakewood is like 2.5 hours. It's not easy. And in those years, it was even more because there was no good highways. So he went very often to see Reb Shneur. And they would shmooze. They became friendly. My father was sick. He came to visit him in the hospital. Whatever. Very nice. Okay. Put that on pause. There was a very interesting Yid in New York. His name was Meir Ronis. Very cute guy. He would go around collecting money. His thing was that he would collect money in order to give Tanya shirs in yeshivas, in Lithuanian yeshivas. Meaning that we're going to have undercover Tanya shirs, Tanya classes, and he would raise money because he needed money that the guy should go there by taxi or whatever. And also you need money because you couldn't give the shir in the yeshiva because the yeshiva was against it. You had to give a shir in somebody's house, so they would have to have some food and bring the boys. Whatever, he raised money. He would raise money, he'd go around raising money. Guy gave him $1, $2, $3, $5. He'd always go around. I don't know, anybody that knew him understands. So my father was one of the few people that had a few dollars in those days. And every time my father came to New York, this Meir Ronis would grab him with like a magnet, and he would harass him. And my father would give him $250, $500, which is a large amount of money in those days. And my father, whatever, okay, fine, you're teaching Tanya. But he didn't really understand what he wanted the whole time. He just, he heard words, Tanya, money, this, I gave him $500. Okay, fine. One time, my father stops, he says, wait a minute, what exactly are you collecting money for? What is this? What's going on? So this Meir Ronis, who was a very innocent person, anybody here knew him, by the way? Anybody?
He was a dollar guy, right?
Yeah. He found a special day in every day of the week. Today is 3 days after Yutas Kislev. It's a Lame's Gula, whatever. Okay. So Meir Ronis was a very innocent-looking guy, very sweet, innocent-looking guy who Nebuch, you can tell that he didn't. What do you call it? What's the word? He didn't embezzle a dime. So he was explaining to my father, you don't understand. The yeshivas don't let the boys learn Tanya. So we have to get a special guy, and we have to get him a taxi. I think it was Rabbi Khan himself. And we have to get him a taxi, and we have to get the place to go. The whole mice, the whole thing. So we need money. We need money in Lakewood to give a shir in Lakewood, to give a Tanya shir. So that's where the money goes. Okay. Father goes to see Reb Schneier Kotler. My father tells Reb Schneier, he says, Reb Schneier, I want to talk to you. He says, there's a thing here called a hidden Tanya shir that the yeshiva doesn't know about. And a Tanya shir. And they come to me that I have to pay money to have this hidden Tanya shir because you don't let the boys learn Tanya. So I have a better idea. Why do I have to give money that it should be hidden? Let me give the money to the yeshiva and make a Tanya share in the yeshiva. What do we have to do? So Reb Schneier tells my father, you have to hide Tanya? Chas v'shalom. God forbid. I learned Tanya. He shows my father, I don't know if it was on his table or in the bookcase behind his table, he shows him a well-worn Tanya. He says, I learned Tanya. You don't have to hide Tanya. You can make a Tanya share. Tell everybody, I said you can make a Tanya share. Fine. The next night, this is the day after Simchas Torah. The next night, my father goes into Yechidus to the Rebbe. I was there. I don't know if anybody merited to be in Yechidus, but when the Rebbe accepted people in Yechidus, he was very tense. It was very tense. It was like, he didn't take it like, he's sitting like this, yeah, what do you want? It wasn't like that. He would sit at the edge of his chair. He would sit at the edge of his chair, like this. So my father finishes his stuff. He says, I want to tell the Rebbe what I did. So he tells the Rebbe the story, and the Rebbe looks at my father and he goes like this. You actually told him those words? And my father said, yeah. He goes, wow. He says, he gave him a bracha. And it's just a cute story because when you want to tell the truth, and you want the truth to come out, and you're not playing games, so there's no isnagdus. There's no darkness. There's no darkness anymore. The Rebbe said today there's no more isnagdus. It's just people are just playing games. If you want to tell the truth, if you want to really accomplish, so today there's no limits. There's no limits. To the point that a few months later, there was another issue, again with this whole company. And the Rebbe said to the people involved, call Mr. Weiss in Los Angeles because he's able to deal with these people. He'll help you out. And he helped it out. Any case, I want to conclude.
No.
At least, okay.
So what was Meir Ronis still asking for money for then?
Okay, listen, there's other issues. Got to make a living, There's a wonderful sefer. It's called Ma'or Einayim. It was made by one of the students of the Baal Shem Tov, called Rabbi Nachum of Chernobyl. The dynasty. By the way, you want to hear a story within a story? You want to hear a story within a story?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. When I was growing up, my father went to New York and he came back, and he brought back some songs. So in my world, the typical Lubavitcher song was what we sang in the beginning of Farbrengen. Why? Because my father used to go for Kol HaMeitzukos and Shmini Atzeret, Shana Rabbah. So I'm sure we do it here. At the end of Hashainis is Eshia Samecha, so everybody sings Eshia Samecha, Varech Es Nachlasecha. What people don't know is that this song is not a Lubavitcher song. The Rebbe later told somebody, people make a mistake, it's not a Lubavitcher song, it's a Lubavitcher song. Meaning, I guess what the Rebbe meant to say was that it's intrinsically a Lubavitch song. What I mean to say is it's not a Lubavitch original. Who made the song? There was a very wonderful person who passed away 2-3 years ago probably. Then was Rabbi Dr. Abraham Tursky from Pittsburgh. And he was a genius in many things. He was a chess genius, by the way, people don't know that. He was also a psychiatrist. There's he somehow I don't know how, but he went to a school in Pittsburgh. There's a famous medical school, and he says he wants to sponsor somebody that has no money, who has a very, very big future, who has a promising future. And they connected him with Abraham Tursky, and Danny Thomas paid for the education of Rabbi Tursky, and there's hence the cover of Life magazine, him shaking Tursky's hand. Tursky's wearing the graduation gown and a Hasidic velvet hat. So it's very well known. In addition to that, he was a scholar. He was a lamdan. He was a tremendous person, and he had amazing knack for songs. So he made the song Hashia Samecha. How did it get to Lubavitch? Because he was a rabbi in Pittsburgh. In Pittsburgh, there was a very great man. His name was Rabbi Posner, Rabbi Sholem Posner. Rabbi Sholem Posner had a daughter who got married, and in honor of the marriage, this Rabbi Tursky sang the song, made the song, this song, and he made it. He composed it, and he sang it. The boy who married Rabbi Posner's daughter was originally an Israeli. And there were a few Israeli boys that came to the wedding in Pittsburgh, and they heard the song. So they came back to Israel, and they said, "Hey guys, we have this wonderful song. We have this wonderful song." And they taught it to the... he's not wearing his... I'm sorry, I made a mistake. He's not wearing his gown. Okay. But it's with Danny Thomas, right? Yeah. So he... there's another picture with the gown, I think by his graduation, where he's wearing the gown.
You say graduation.
Huh?
You say graduation.
Yeah. Anyways, so the bottom line is, the boy in Israel, they started singing the song. So then in 1962 or 63, the first wave of Hasidim came to the Rebbe. So the Rebbe was it's called, from Israel. Yeah. It's called the Charter. They had the Charter. And the Rebbe was very nice to them. And the Rebbe says, "Okay, guys, sing an Israeli song. Sing a song from Israel." So they all started singing Yeshia Samecha. And the Rebbe enthusiastically accepted it. And from then on, it became, my father was there, so he figured, this is an Israeli song, this is the thing. When Dr. Tursky passed away, and somebody sent me a clip once of his levaya, of his funeral. When Dr. Tursky passed away, he was a great man. Anybody that read his books, he was amazing. He was an amazing person. I have his first 2 books. You know what his first 2 books were? Nobody will believe it. Does anybody know? Does anybody know who Dr. Tursky is? Yeah. You guys know, right? You guys know who he is. No. His first 2 books. Listen to this. Listen how great this is. His first two books. I wonder if it's maybe like a valuable thing. He started writing when he was like 70 years old or 65 years old. He was a psychiatrist. He dealt with addiction. He dealt what?
His last book was great with the age.
Yeah, later he wrote, but he said he was addicted to writing. But he started writing when he was like 65, 70 years old. He was a psychiatrist. He had not a company. He had a clinic for addiction. He was gateways, yeah. But even before that, he had like a clinic, like a a clinic, an office for addiction. So he said he was so stressed. He was so stressed that he had to like release himself. Listen. This is I okay. You don't know me, but I love this. This is true godless. He took Peanuts comics, Snoopy comic books, and he would read the comic books at the during lunch. He would sit at the table, eat a sandwich, and he would read Snoopy Peanuts comics. And he realized that there's a tremendous wisdom in this guy, this Charles Schulz, who wrote Peanuts. There's tremendous chachma here, with the kicking, the ball, he never gets the ball. There's a tremendous amount of oimik, of depth. So he wrote two books based on, the comic, and he wrote his pirush on the comic. Really, and it's very beautiful. It's very interesting. Anyways, so he when he was getting old, whatever, 93 years old, 94 years old, he realized that his time is close. So he wrote a will and testament. He says, by my levaya, I don't want anybody to say one word. I don't want anybody to say one word. Only thing I want is you should sing Hashia Samecha. So there's a video of a bunch of Chassidim, because he was not Chabad. He came from Chernobyl. Tursky. Tursky is Chernobyl. He came from Chernobyl, and there's a video how they're carrying his. In Israel, they don't bury in a casket. In Israel, they bury in the talus, whatever, shroud, talus, whatever. So there's a video how they're walking, like for 3 minutes. In their way. Anyways, so that's the story within the story. So the Moreh Naim says like this. He says like this. He says an amazing thing. There's a very famous Gemara in Yuma. Everybody knows this Gemara. Gemara says, Pischuli, Kechudei, Pischuli, Habal L'Taher, Paischinlei. Habal L'Taher, Paischinlei. I'm sorry. Habal L'Tamei, forgive me. Habal L'Tamei, Paischinlei. If somebody comes and he wants to do the bad thing, he wants to do a Aveda. He wants to do something that he shouldn't be doing. So, Paiskanlei, we open the door. In other words, we're not going to stop him. Everybody has their choice, right? Habalitame, Paiskanlei. The door is open. Nobody's gonna stop you. There's free will. Habalitayr. But if somebody comes to purify himself, Messiah, I say, we help him. Right? Very, very famous, very well-known Gemara. So the Moreh Naim says like this. He says, what's the pshat? Gemara is telling you, the Gemara needs to tell me that when Moshe Weiss wants to do something wrong, you should know that this is your door. This is your door to overcome what you want to do. In other words, this is you have an opening now. This is your opening. In other words, when a person has a impulse that he wants to do something wrong, so the proof, the vart is, says the Moreh Naim, this is what you have to overcome. This is your door that you have to go through. Huh?
No one else's door.
Whatever, no one else's door, or this is your thing. This is your thing. This is your weakness. So the truth is, I was thinking that this is Tanya. What is Tanya? If you have to put the whole book of Tanya in one or two paragraphs. What's the word? You say that the Alter Rebbe wrote the Tanya is called Sefer Shel Beinanim, the book of average people. Alter Rebbe wrote a book called Sefer Shel Tzadikim, the book for Tzadikim, but he burnt it because there's no Tzadikim today. We're all average people. So Alter Rebbe writes in Tanya an amazing thing. He says that if you think that you're not going to have impulses, if you think that you're not going to have things that are going to push you to do negative things, you're wrong. Everybody has impulses. You're fooling yourself. Alter Rebbe writes even in one place that if a person has, what do you do if in the middle of davening you have bad thoughts? So the Alter Rebbe says, don't worry, don't get depressed. They're trying to get you. They're trying to get you. Says the Alter Rebbe, and this is probably one of the most powerful sentences in Tanya, right? Va'al yehi shaita. Don't be a fool and say to yourself, I'm a big tzaddik. So maybe these bad thoughts are not my bad thoughts. It's my neighbor's bad thoughts. And I'm supposed to elevate them because I'm a tzaddik. Says Alter Rebbe, don't be an idiot. Don't be a fool. He uses those words. Al yehi shaita. Don't be a fool to say that these are not your thoughts. These are your thoughts. This is your stuff. Elamai. And so therefore, what's the pshat? You're an average person. You're a regular person. And you can, and you have the ability to overcome this is Tanya. This is the Marianayim is telling us basically Tanya. He's telling us that what is the antidote to overcome your impulses, your dachaf? This is it. This is your thing. You can overcome it. You have the ability, and Hashem is going to help you. So we see from here how all the rivers flow to the same sea. Maybe we should help, and we should overcome and use and illuminate and have a pashut. When a person fulfills his mission in life, he has he has an inner peace, an inner serenity, knowing that what he did was meant to be l'chaim.